Okay, welcome back everyone. And in this video, we are going to be playing the 1987 World Champion Minnesota Twins against the 1986 World Champion New York Mets in a best of seven fantasy series. Now, the reasons why I wanted to play this series with the 1987 Twins is because I did a video on a 1980s American League Special Teams series set that Strat-O-Matic released. And I kind of felt like after I went back and looked at everything that, in a way, I kind of in a way disrespected the 1987 Twins with their ranking, even though it was based on a point system. I had them have to play a one game play in to get into the first round. And then in the first round series, they were on the road for all three games. It's just one of those things where numbers just came up the way that they were. I also said uh, that the 1987 Twins. This was in a different video, in a video where I played the 78 Yankees against the 79 Pirates, and I was talking about how unimpressed I was with the 1978 Yankees. I said in that video that I would say of the cards that I have, the three worst World Series championship teams I've seen in Stratomatic would be the 1978 Yankees, the 1988 Dodgers, and the 1987 Twins. So, with that said, I just wanted to actually sit down and play a series with the Minnesota Twins and just see if they could change my mind in any ways. So I got them going up against the 1986 Mets. I wanted to keep the series between, the Twins and a National League champion from the 1980s. So, and I just did a video on the 1980 Phillies and the 1981 Dodgers. So I was like, let me just have them go up against the 86 Mets and see how they do. Now, a couple things about the 1987 Twins. First, let me start off with a positive note about that team. This is probably the best defensive team I've ever come across in Stratomatic. There's really no holes when it comes to defense if you stick by the starting lineup with Herbeck at first, Lombardozzi at second, Gagne at short, Gaetti at third, the outfield, Gladden, Puckett, Brunansky left to right, and then your catcher is Loudner. There's really no holes defensively where when you roll the X chart and you kind of say, oh no, the ball's hit to left or the ball is hit to third. So that is definitely a positive for the 1987 Twins. The other positive is the offense is good, not great. I'd say it's just good. It's a little bit top heavy in terms of the middle of the lineup. Not crazy about the top of the lineup with Dan Gladden. Not Gladden was never really a great on base guy. Um, and when you get to the middle of the lineup, that's really solid when you got Puckett, Herbeck, Brunansky, and then when you face lefties, you got Don Baylor at DH, or if you face righties, you got either Roy Smalley or Randy Bush at DH. So I'd say the offense is good, but not any better than that because the bottom of the order is a little bit weak. Decent power throughout the lineup, as you would expect them playing their games in Minnesota. So that's what they have going for them. What I don't like about the Minnesota Twins, the top thing that I don't like is I don't like the bullpen at all. And that starts with the closer, Jeff Reardon. Now, Jeff Reardon did have over 30 saves that year. However, he pitched to an over 4 ERA. And his card against left handed hitting is really rough, where he has a number of ballpark effect home runs in spots where you just don't want them. So, um, I'm not crazy about the closer, and frankly, I'm not crazy about anyone else really in that bullpen as a whole. I think Berenguer's card, he was a setup guy. His card is just okay. Same with George Frazier. His card is just okay. Carlton has a pretty good card. You could use him as a starter or reliever. So not crazy about the Twins bullpen at all. Um, Same deal with the starting rotation. I think Frank Viola got a little bit screwed in 1987 with his card. His card is very hittable. And when you look at his numbers that year, he pitched to an under 3 ERA pitching in Minnesota. So he really had a hell of a year in 1987. Uh, but if he's your ace, then the rest of the rotation you could kind of tell after that is going to be very hittable after that. You got Blyleven, who's got just an okay card, and then after that, the rest of the starters are just not good at all. So that's my assessment on the 1987 Twins. I've already spoken on the 1986 Mets in other videos, so I'm just going to get right into the series and let's see how the 1987 Twins hold up against the 1986 Mets. And like I do before every series, I just roll the 20-sided die to decide home field advantage. And unfortunately for the 87 Twins, it came up for the Mets. So the first two games will be played in New York. So let's get right into this series. In game number one, we got Frank Viola going up against Dwight Gooden. And you're going to see right here that the 1986 Mets were able to break through for 4 runs in the bottom half of the fourth inning to make the score 4-0. You had three straight hits by Ray Knight, Tim Tuffle, Rafael Santana. Dwight Gooden had an RBI sac fly, and then Dykstra and Mitchell followed up with 2 out RBI singles. So Minnesota is down 4-0 as we go to the top half of the fifth inning. And in the ninth inning, the Twins were able to mount a pretty good rally. Now, going into that top of the ninth inning, I brought in Jesse Orosco because I pinch hit for uh, Dwight Gooden in the bottom half of the eighth inning as I was in a run scoring situation, and it worked out as Lee Mazzilli had a RBI single to make the score 5-1. So I brought in Jesse Orosco in the top half of the ninth inning, and immediately Gagne and Puckett lead off with singles, but you could see I got two little black circles next to them. That indicates that they were ground balls to second base, and Wally Backman that year was a 3 at second base. So both of those were fielding chart hits. And then Ken Herbeck followed up with a single to load the bases. So we're sitting there in a 5-1 game, top half of the ninth inning. And the Minnesota Twins have the bases loaded and nobody out. But as you can see, Orozco was able to close the door from there. He gets Brunansky to pop out. Gaetti has a RBI walk, and then Tim Laudner grounds into a force out. Pinch hit Don Baylor for Steve Lombardozzi. Felt good about that matchup, but Don Baylor flew out to end the game. So the New York Mets take the first game by a score of 5-3. You can see Dwight Gooden was excellent as he goes 8 innings and only allows 1 run. Now, moving on to game number two here, we've got Burt Blyleven going for the Minnesota Twins and Bob Ojeda going for the 1986 New York Mets. And you're going to see here that the New York Mets were able to come back and score 2 runs in the bottom half of the eighth inning to make the score 4-4. Now, going into that bottom half of the eighth inning, I decided Minnesota was in a closed situation, so I brought in Jeff Reardon. And as we take a look at that bottom half of the eighth inning, Keith Hernandez leads off with a walk. After a Gary Carter strikeout, Darryl Strawberry hits a 2-run home run to tie the game. So, and if memory serves me right, I rolled a 4-9 on Jeff Reardon's card, and that was like a home run 1-17 or something like that. So, I'm positive that that home run came off of Jeff Reardon's card. So the Mets are able to tie it as we go 4-4 to the top of the ninth. However, in the top half of the 10th inning, the Twins were able to get an RBI sac fly by Kent Herbeck, and they were able to close the game from there as Steve Carlton goes 2 scoreless innings out of the pen. So Minnesota is able to get 1 game in New York, and with the middle 3 games in Minnesota, you're kind of thinking, okay, we've got a little bit of a series here. So let's go on and move on to game number 3, where we have Ron Darling going for the Mets and Les Straker going for the Minnesota Twins. So let's take a look at what happened in this game. And we're going to see here that the New York Mets were able to jump all over Les Straker and then in relief, George Frazier, as the Mets scored 3 in the third, 2 in the fourth, 1 in the fifth, and then 2 more in the sixth inning. The big game was out of Gary Carter as he goes 2 for 5 with two-run home runs in the game, and the Mets were pretty much able to cruise to a pretty easy 8-4 win. They went to the bottom of the ninth inning with an 8-2 lead, and after a Brunansky two-run home run off of Darling, I decided to bring in Jesse Orosco, and he's able to retire the side. So the New York Mets, after 3 games, have a 2 games to 1 lead. Now, as we move on to game number 4 here, I'm thinking going into this game that this is an absolutely must win for the Minnesota Twins, as the New York Mets are going to go with Sid Fernandez in game number 4, not bothering going with Dwight Gooden on 3 days rest, so he'll be fully rested for game number 5, and Frank Viola going on 3 days rest for the 1987 Twins. So you see, the game got off to a decent start for the 1987 Twins as they led 3-0 after 5 innings. I decided to play Al Newman at shortstop in this game for the Twins just because I really wasn't getting much out of Gagne and just wanted to just see if I could change things up a little bit for the 87 Twins. Newman is a good defensive shortstop and has a really nice card against left-handed pitching. So I decided to throw him in there, and you could see it paid off as he had the 2 RBI triple in the bottom half of the 5th inning to make it 3-0 Twins. So at that point, from an 87 Twins perspective, I'm feeling pretty good going to the top half of the 6th inning with a 3-0 lead. However, you're going to see here, Keith Hernandez hits a 3-run home run off of Frank Viola to make it 3-3. And then in the top half of the 8th inning, the Mets were able to get 4 runs across as we had a RBI single by Gary Carter, a 2 RBI single by Ray Knight, and then an RBI single by Mookie Wilson. So the Mets have a 7-3 lead going to the bottom half of the 8th inning, and they're able to win a relatively easy 10-4 final as they were able to tack on 3 more runs in the top half of the 9th inning as Gary Carter hit a 3-run home run. So we're sitting here after 4 games with a 3-1 Mets series lead. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, from an 87 Twins perspective, I got Burt Blyleven going on the mound on 3 days rest. Let me just find a way to get game number 5, and let's extend this series and go back to New York for game number 6. In game number 5, we've got Dwight Gooden going up against Burt Blyleven, and Burt Blyleven gave the Minnesota Twins a really nice outing as he goes 8 innings, only allowing 3 runs on 7 hits. The 3 runs came in the top half of the 4th inning, where with the Twins holding a 2-0 lead, Danny Heap hits a 3-run home run off of Blyleven to give the Mets a 3-2 lead. And then in the bottom half of the 7th inning, the Twins were able to get 2 runs across as Tom Brunansky had an RBI triple and then Gary Gaetti had a RBI sac fly. So we go to the top half of the 9th inning with the Twins holding a 4-3 lead. And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, I got Burt Blyleven going on 3 days rest. So he, after going 8 innings, is automatically in his point of weakness. So even though I didn't want to make this move, I bring Jeff Reardon into the game. Now, the inning started off not his fault as Danny Heat reached on a Dan Gladden error in left field, which was very surprising. You heard me speak of the Minnesota Twins defense, how good it was. Dan Gladden in 1987 in left field, I believe he was only like an E4 or E5, one of those numbers. He had a very low E rating. However, it came up an error. So he leads off Danny Heap reaching second base on an error. So he's on second. And then Mookie Wilson hits a 2-run home run off of Jeff Reardon. And yes, that home run was also hit off of Jeff Reardon's card. Now, in defense of the move that I made, I'm pretty sure that 5-5 on when you roll a 5-5 on Burt Blyleven's card, I believe that's a ballpark effect home run as well. However, Jeff Reardon was in the game. Mookie Wilson hits a 2-run home run, and then it didn't get any better from there as Ray Knight gets a single. He's bunted over the second by Rafael Santana. And then Lenny Dykstra gets an RBI single. Wally Backman gets an RBI single. So the Mets really opened it up in the top half of the 9th inning. They take a 7-4 lead. And I decided to just run Gooden out there for the ninth inning rather than bringing in Orozco. And I thought, okay, if he gets into trouble, I could just bring in Jesse Orozco. But you could see not much of a rally was mounted by the Twins in that bottom of the ninth. Leadoff single by Puckett. Herbeck grounds out into a force out, and then Tom Brunansky grounds into a double play. So there we have it. The 1986 Mets defeat the 1987 Twins 4 games to 1 in a relatively easy win for the 86 Mets. And everything I thought about the 1987 Twins going into the series for the most part played out in this series against the 1986 Mets. Jeff Reardon had a really rough series, as in 2 games, in 1 1/3 inning, he allowed 5 earned runs and allowed 7 base runners to reach base in only 1 1/3 innings. Dan Gladden had a rough series, as he only had 5 hits in 22 at bats and really was not on base a lot. Kirby Puckett went 7 for 21 in the series. He went 3 for 4 in the last game. And I really felt like, had I gotten Minnesota past game 5 and back to Shea for game number 6, I just felt like Puckett was really starting to. I was starting to roll his card a lot more as the series went on and on. So he was really starting to get hotter as the series went on. But unfortunately, in the first 4 games, he really didn't do much. And Minnesota's game in 1987 was really predicated on their offense, especially in their park. So they were never really to really open it up and really put a lot of runs on the board. Um, in the 3 games of this series that they played in Minnesota. Um, for the New York Mets, a terrific series out of Dwight Gooden, as in 2 games, he gets 2 wins, allowing 5 earned runs in 17 innings pitched. Gary Carter had a big series, as he hit 3 home runs and drove in 8 in the series. And Len Dykstra, it seems every series I play, whether it's with the 86 Mets or the 1993 Phillies, Len Dykstra just always kills it in Strat-O-Matic. He goes 9 for 23 in the series with 5 runs scored and 4 RBIs. And he just always seemed to be in the middle of something in this 5 game set. So there you have it. The 1986 Mets defeat the 1987 Twins 4 games to 1.